The nocturnal highway breathes a steel silence. A truck rumbles forward, heavy, lit only by its own certainty. Three black Honda Civics emerge from anonymity and surround it like shadows that have learned to move with surgical precision. The air slices through the roar of the engines. The harpoons launch, bite in, go taut. The scene is pure speed and emptiness. The driver barely has time to understand that his world has been intercepted. In a matter of seconds, the balance breaks. The road narrows and the Civics vanish beneath the trailer as if danger were their natural habitat. They climb onto the truck, neutralize the driver, and, with the skill of those who master chaos, disappear among distant lights. The asphalt is left trembling, hot, as if it still breathed the echo of the heist. I've always been fascinated by how an instant can contain everything: order and destruction, fear and calm. Sometimes a single second is enough for life to spin in the opposite direction. Living a quarter mile at a time isn't a metaphor for speed. It's a way to survive the inevitable. We've all felt that vertigo, the certainty that what we believed stable can shatter with a single decision, a poorly taken curve. And in that abyss, only the present seems to offer us a place to stand. When the world accelerates without warning, are you the one driving or just a passenger clinging to the wheel? In another corner of the city, a green Mitsubishi Eclipse purrs on the strip. Brian O'Connor repeats the same moves over and over, trying to hit an impossible time. The engine screams. The machine resists. In his eyes, there is more than the desire to win, a dull anxiety to belong. He changes the car, he changes direction, but the feeling is the same. The emptiness. He walks into Toretto's diner. He isn't looking for food, he's looking for connection. Mia, behind the counter, smiles at him with a warmth you can't buy. Dominic Toretto watches from the back. There is something almost ritual in his presence, the calm of a leader who understands the weight of gazes. Outside, modified cars arrive like a war chorus. Vince, the most impatient, confronts Brian. The air grows heavy. The fight erupts. Fists, shouts, wounded pride. Dominic steps out, imposes silence without raising his voice. A single gesture is enough. In that moment, Brian loses his job at the auto parts store, but gains something more important: the right to be noticed. He dominates who doesn't need to impose himself. I'm struck by how authentic respect is born from control, not force. Maybe that's what it means to live in the moment, to respond with presence, not impulse. That night, the streets turn into a clandestine temple. The city vibrates with the pulse of engines. Brian, determined, bets the only thing he has: his car and his word. If he wins, he'll earn money and respect. If he loses, he'll be stripped bare before himself. Dominic accepts. The crowd holds its breath. The countdown begins. The cars launch. The world contracts into the finish line. The nitrous wakes up. The landscape stretches like a liquid dream. Brian brushes victory, but Dom catches him in the final breath. Winning is winning, he says, with the serenity of someone who has nothing to prove. The moment has passed, but Dom still holds it. There's something profoundly human in that. In understanding that life isn't measured by the distance traveled, but by the intensity with which you inhabit each second. Dom doesn't race to escape. He races to exist within the only time that still belongs to him, the now. In a world that teaches us to plan everything, we forget that the present is the only ground we truly stand on. The mind runs to the past or to the future, but the body is always here, in this curve. And how many times have you won by an inch and forgotten it the next day? Sirens tear in. The crowd scatters. Dom is cornered, but Brian arrives in time. Get in, he yells. Adrift, smoke, red lights receding. In seconds, the line between enemy and ally dissolves. They hide in a parking garage. Dom gives thanks without saying it. But the silence is broken by a swarm of motorcycles, Johnny Tran and his crew. The tension is electric. Dom tries to apologize, but words don't save metal. Brian's car explodes in a burst of flame. The fire lights their faces, destruction and revelation at the same time. It's strange how sometimes fire not only burns but cleanses. Through the flames we understand what really matters. Dom sees in Brian someone willing to take risks. Brian sees in Dom a man who doesn't flee from danger, but from the void. We too sometimes need something to burn to recognize what remains standing. It's in loss that the truth of the moment is revealed. When you lose everything, what do you cling to so you don't disappear? At the Toretto house, the party goes on. The music thumps, but beneath the laughter there is a shared silence. Dom calls out his crew for having abandoned him. Brian was the only one who came back for him. Loyalty is measured like this, by who returns when the noise stops. Dom offers him a beer, a small gesture, but sacred. Vince watches him with jealousy that tastes like defeat. I like to think respect is like a spark. It makes no sound, but it can ignite everything. And when it's shared in the midst of chaos, it becomes something bigger than speed. The camera lingers on Mia's gaze. She understands before anyone else that Brian isn't there for a simple game. There's something in him seeking redemption, though he doesn't know from what. At dawn, a patrol car stops him. Handcuffs, protocol, silence. But as he crosses the door of a secret warehouse, the truth changes color. Brian works for the FBI. His mission, find out who's behind the robberies. Everything else, the races, the friendship, the love, was part of the disguise. At that point, the double life becomes a metaphor. We are all two versions, the one we show and the one we hide, the one that obeys and the one that dreams. Living a quarter mile at a time is, perhaps, reconciling those two halves. It happens to us too. We fake stability while inside we're running flat out. We build facadas to avoid admitting we're afraid of losing control. But deep down, we're all a bit infiltrated in our own story. In what part of your life are you pretending to belong? In the garage, the day moves slowly. Brian arrives with a wrecked car. Dom accepts it as payment. On one condition, he'll fix it himself. Among wrenches and engines, the clatter of tools becomes a language. Jesse shows him the soul of the group, a refuge made of speed and trust. Letty and Leon complete the picture. Dom watches. He doesn't talk much, but his gaze protects like someone guarding a fragile dream. In that garage, there is more humanity than in all the FBI reports. Their time is measured in bolts, in glances, in complicity. I realize that the philosophy of the moment doesn't seek to deny the past, but to free us from its weight. Dom lives without plans, but not out of recklessness. He does it because he learned that any tomorrow might not come. After losing his father, he understood that life isn't scheduled. It's driven. We also run between calendars, goals, to-dos. And in that frenzy, we forget that every second has an unrepeatable texture. We become specialists in postponing happiness as if the future were guaranteed. If this were your last quarter mile, whom would you look at before you hit the gas? At FBI offices, the pressure mounts. Bilkins demands results. Tanner watches in silence. Brian tries to buy time, but the clock advances. He says Dom doesn't fit as a criminal, though he knows too much. They ask for proof, not hunches. But truth doesn't let itself be trapped in reports. It's curious. The system needs certainties, but life moves among probabilities. Living in the moment is accepting that we'll never know everything. That truth, like speed, is felt, not proven. Brian returns to the garage. Dom works in silence. The sun sinks, tinting the tools copper. The scene has the calm of a sunrise in reverse. Two men, two codes, one respect. Neither says it, but both understand that every day together is a countdown. Sometimes I think the awareness of loss is what gives depth to the present. If we knew that nothing ever leaves, we would value nothing. Dom learned it watching his father burn. Brian learns it in every gaze he can't hold. We all have a charger hidden in some garage of the soul, something we built with love and fear, and that we never dared to drive. Because doing so would mean accepting that there's no turning back. What part of your life do you still keep under a tarp, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes? The workshop engine goes silent. The city prepares for another race. Brian, torn between duty and desire, feels that the next curve will decide who he really is. The hiss of a compressor merges with the beating of a heart. The camera pulls away slowly. The story continues, but the instant that small space where everything converges is already happening. And maybe that's what it's about, understanding that life doesn't happen later, But now, while the engines keep turning inside us, night ignites over the desert. The cars roar in line, lighting the sand with neon flashes. The desert race is not just speed, it's a ritual. Dominic settles behind the wheel with the calm of someone who has learned that control is an illusion. Brian, beside him, feels the entire world shrink to that infinite straightaway. They accelerate. The vibration rises from the ground to the chest. Each gear shift is a breath. For an instant, there is no past, no future, only the absolute present, pure and perfect. Dom crosses the finish line first. He doesn't celebrate. In his eyes, there is no euphoria, only something like peace. Maybe that's why he races. Not to win, but to stop time. In every quarter mile, Dom finds a place where nothing chases him, neither guilt, nor memory, nor absence. Only the sound of the engine and the pulse of the instant. We, too, struggle to stop. We live planning, running after a goal that moves along with us. And when we arrive, there's nothing left. Dom, instead, finds fullness in the smallest fraction of the now. He reminds us that the present is the only thing we can truly possess. How long has it been since you stopped to feel something without wondering how long it would last? Days later, the air thickens with tension. Jesse bets his father's car loses and flees. Johnny Tran swears revenge. Chaos looms. Dom and Brian argue, but Mia's voice interrupts. Just be careful. The phrase sounds like a farewell. That night, while the city sleeps, the engines ignite in silence. The crew prepares for their last hit. Vince loads the cables. Letty tightens her gloves. Dom watches with a grave expression. Brian follows, knowing that line will cross more than a road, it will cross his destiny. The heist goes wrong. The truck driver is armed. Vince ends up hanging, trapped by a cable. The sound of metal and gunfire mixes with the wind. Letty spins off the road. Dom's car loses control. For a moment, everything seems to collapse. Then, the roar of an engine approaches. It's Brian. He arrives just as the chaos peaks. He jumps onto the trailer, breaks the cable, saves Vince. I'm a police officer. He shouts over the radio. The secret is out. Dom hears it, caught between astonishment and betrayal. But the moment leaves no room for reproach, only survival. When time shatters, the masks fall. There are no names or sides, only choices. In that second, Brian acts not as an agent or a friend. He acts as a human being, aware that the moment demands truth. We have moments like that too, when there's no time to think of consequences and we can only choose what the heart dictates. That's where authenticity begins. If you knew you had just 1 second to be yourself, what would you do? Dawn paints the wreckage in orange. Vince is airlifted away. Dom watches in silence. He says nothing, but his eyes reveal everything. Respect, pain, farewell. Brian is left alone, surrounded by dust and questions no report could answer. Sometimes the moment hurts, but that pain is also life. There is no fullness without loss. Dom has known it for years. Brian is learning it now. Living a quarter mile at a time isn't ignoring the past, it's making peace with it. Later, Brian arrives at Dom's house. He finds him armed, ready to go after Jesse. The silence between them is a contained engine. Dom isn't running, he's trying to close his cycle. Don't call the cops, he says. Brian doesn't answer. He just nods. Outside, the roar of motorcycles. Johnny Tran opens fire. Jesse falls. The chosen family screams, runs, bleeds. Chaos takes the streets again. Dom and Brian go after them. The chase becomes catharsis. The asphalt desert devours the miles. Johnny falls. Revenge brings no solace. When fury fades, emptiness enters. What felt like justice now feels hollow. Maybe because the moment doesn't ask for revenge, it asks for understanding. On a lonely street, Dom and Brian stop before an approaching train. The roar of the cars mixes with the thunder of engines. When the light turns green, I'm going for it, Dom says. Brian smiles. He knows that phrase isn't about speed, it's about freedom. The light turns green. They accelerate. Time stretches. Their bodies dissolve into vibration. They cross the tracks 1 second before impact. But destiny takes its price. The Charger spins out, crashes into a truck. The silence afterward feels infinite. Brian runs. He helps Dom out of the wreck. Sirens approach. In that instant, everything stops. 2 men, 2 paths, 1 respect. Brian takes the keys to his car and hands them to Dom. I owe you a 10-second car. Dom looks at him, says nothing. The gesture is enough. That exchange is more than an escape, it's a confession. Brian chooses the moment over the law, humanity over obedience. He finally understands that every decision born of the heart carries a cost, but also a freedom. Living a quarter mile at a time, when you've already lost everything, isn't surrender, it's letting go of the weight you can't carry anymore. It's accepting that the past can't be erased, but it also can't be repeated. If today you had nothing left but this second, would you dare to live it without fear? Dom's engine fades into the empty streets. The camera follows until the horizon swallows him. The Charger's roar dies slowly, like a heart finally finding rest. Brian stands alone, his gaze lost between the smoke and the dawn light. And I understand that is the philosophy of the moment, the awareness that everything, love, guilt, loss, forgiveness, happens in the same place where you breathe. Not in another time, not in another life. Here, we run to, day after day, trying to reach someplace that doesn't exist. But life isn't at the finish line. It's in every curve, every acceleration, every breath we take without thinking. Don't look for the perfect moment. Live the one you have. Because sometimes the only thing we have left is this brief stretch of road, our own quarter mile of eternity.